The quieter you become, the more you can hear. That quote by Ram Dass sets the perfect tone for what we're about to explore. This isn't just another video about toxic people or relationships. This is about a silent strength that shakes a narcissist to the core. Today we're diving into 7 signs a super empath is silently destroying a narcissist's ego. And trust me, some of these signs might surprise you. You see, a super empath isn't loud, isn't dramatic, and doesn't seek revenge with anger. They fight back by healing, by growing, and by becoming emotionally unshakable. And guess what? That's what hurts a narcissist the most. They can't handle being ignored. They can't stand watching someone they tried to break rise up stronger, happier, and completely out of reach. So if you've ever felt too emotional, too caring, or like someone used your kindness against you, this is your moment to take your power back, not through shouting, but through silence, strength, and deep self-love. As we break down these 7 powerful signs, I want you to think about your own story. Where do you see yourself? Which sign speaks to your experience? And more importantly, what would it feel like to finally reclaim your peace? Stick with me till the very end, because the last one might just be the most powerful of all. And hey, if this speaks to you, if you feel seen right now, don't be shy. Show some love, hit that like button, and join our community where we support, grow, and rise together. Let's turn pain into power, quietly but fiercely. Let's go. When a super empath stops reacting emotionally, something powerful happens without saying a single word. You see, narcissists feed off attention, drama, and control. They want reactions. They want you to cry, yell, explain, or defend yourself because your emotional energy is their fuel. But when an empath learns to stay calm, to no longer give that energy, the narcissist feels like they're slowly losing their grip. That calmness is not weakness. It's quiet strength. It's the moment the empath says without speaking, "I see you, but I won't be your puppet anymore." And that calm, it's terrifying to the narcissist. They don't know what's going on. They feel powerless. This is where the hook truly hits. The calm becomes louder than any scream ever could. The narcissist might throw more tantrums, try new tricks, even act extra kind to pull you back in. But the empath doesn't budge. They don't need to yell to show power. Their silence, their peace, is the strongest boundary they've ever set. And slowly the narcissist realizes they can't win this game anymore. Because the game only works if the other person plays. But the empath isn't playing anymore. They're just existing calmly. And that shakes the narcissist's world. No chaos, no begging, no please understand me. Just peace. And that peace says everything. It says, I'm no longer afraid. I'm no longer under your control. That stillness becomes a wall no manipulation can climb. And in that moment, the narcissist feels something they never expected to feel. Small, not in size, but in power. The empath's calmness reflects their truth so clearly that the narcissist sees their own emptiness staring back. That's why the calm is deadly to control. It ends the cycle, it breaks the loop, and it reminds the empath of the power they always had, hidden behind every soft word and every quiet step. There comes a moment in an empath's life when something shifts deep inside them, not loudly, not suddenly, but with a steady strength that's been building quietly. It starts when the empath, who has always been the giver, the forgiver, the one who tries to keep the peace, finally decides that enough is enough. They begin doing something that once felt impossible. They start saying no, not with yelling, not with slamming doors or angry words, but with calm, clear truth. This is what we call the boundary revolution. It's quiet but powerful. It's soft but unshakable. And to a narcissist, it's terrifying. Narcissists are used to pushing past people's limits. They test boundaries and expect others to bend, especially those who are naturally kind and empathetic. They love the power of control, the ability to walk all over someone without facing consequences. But when an empath begins to grow, to realize their worth, they also realize they don't have to accept everything. They don't have to give endless chances. They don't have to say yes just to keep the peace. Slowly but surely, they start drawing lines. They say, this is what I will allow, and this is what I won't accept anymore. These boundaries are not made of stone, but of self-respect, and that makes them stronger than any wall. The narcissist feels it right away. That shift in energy, that new sense of self coming from the empath. The power they once had begins to slip away. Every time the empath says no without guilt, the narcissist feels their influence fading. Every time the empath chooses themselves over pleasing others, the narcissist loses their grip. This is not a battle of shouting matches or dramatic exits. This is a quiet, powerful rebellion, a revolution of the soul. And what makes it even more intense is that the empath isn't trying to hurt the narcissist. They're not seeking revenge. They're simply choosing peace, self-love, and emotional safety. They are healing. They are growing. And their growth is making the narcissist shrink. The narcissist might try harder to manipulate, might play the victim, or try love bombing all over again. But it doesn't work like it used to. The empath sees through it now. The boundaries stand tall. This revolution is not about closing the heart. It's about protecting it. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming wise. The empath is not less loving. They're just finally loving themselves enough to stop letting others take advantage of their kindness. And as these new boundaries form, the narcissist is forced to confront a reality they never imagined. They are no longer in control. The person they thought would always forgive, always stay, always make excuses for them, has finally changed the rules of the game. The empath doesn't need to explain or defend these boundaries. Their actions speak for themselves. Their peace, their confidence, their ability to walk away from disrespect all send one clear message: you don't control me anymore. And that, for a narcissist, is the beginning of the end. Because when the empath rises, not in anger, but in truth, the entire dynamic changes. The narcissist loses the power to hurt them, because the empath is no longer reachable in the same way. They've built something stronger than walls. They've built inner strength. And that's what a real boundary revolution looks like. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who knows the truth, but doesn't need to shout it. That's where the super empath becomes someone the narcissist never saw coming. See, narcissists wear masks. They pretend. They play roles. They charm. They lie. They build up an image that makes them look strong, kind, or important. But it's all a performance meant to control how others see them. For a long time, this works. People believe the act. They fall for the sweet talk, the fake smiles, and the clever games. But not the super empath, not anymore. Over time, the super empath starts to see through it all. They notice the patterns, the lies that don't line up, the way the narcissist twists stories, plays the victim, and shifts blame. And the scariest part for the narcissist? The empath doesn't say a word. They don't scream, accuse, or call them out in front of others. They just know, and they carry that knowledge like a quiet flame. It burns in the background, lighting up every dark corner the narcissist tries to hide in. This silent awareness is more damaging than a loud confrontation. Why? Because the narcissist can sense that the mask is slipping, but they don't know how much the empath has figured out. That mystery, that fear of being truly seen, shakes them to the core. For someone who depends on being admired and obeyed, being seen in their raw, selfish, manipulative form is like being exposed in the cold. The empath doesn't need to fight. They already won by seeing the truth and choosing not to be fooled anymore. And it's that choice, the choice to see and stay silent, that holds incredible strength. It's not weakness, it's not fear, it's control. The super empath doesn't need to drag the narcissist into the light. They know the truth, they've accepted it, and they've moved beyond it. That quiet, powerful decision to keep walking, to no longer play the game, to watch from a distance and never return, that's what hurts the narcissist most. Because now the narcissist is alone behind their mask, wondering who else might see what the empath saw, and just isn't saying it out loud. For so long, the empath has been the caregiver, the one who gives and gives, endlessly trying to fix what's broken and heal what's hurting. They pour all their energy into others, especially into the narcissist, believing that with enough love and care, they can somehow make everything better. The empath becomes the lifeline, the one who listens to the narcissist's endless complaints, comforts them through their emotional storms, and sacrifices their own needs to keep the narcissist happy. But there comes a point when something changes. The empath wakes up. They start to realize that no matter how much they give, no matter how much they pour into the narcissist, it's never enough. It's like throwing water into a bucket with a hole in it. Nothing sticks. The narcissist's needs are endless, and every attempt to fix or soothe only leaves the empath drained and unappreciated. This realization brings about the shift from caregiver to observer. The empath stops rescuing. They stop trying to fix the narcissist's problems. They stop being the emotional sponge that absorbs all the hurt and pain, only to be drained in the process. They stop pouring energy into the black hole of the narcissist's need for constant attention and validation. Instead, they take a step back and become an observer, someone who watches calmly, without getting caught up in the chaos or emotional drama. This doesn't mean the empath stops caring. It means they've finally realized that caring for themselves is just as important, if not more so, than trying to care for someone who refuses to change. And for the narcissist, this shift is like a world cracking apart. For so long, they've relied on the empath to fuel their ego, to meet their every demand, to soothe their insecurities. But when the empath withdraws, when they stop offering themselves up as the emotional caretaker, the narcissist's world starts to crumble. Suddenly, they feel exposed. Their mask begins to slip. They realize that the constant flow of attention and care they were getting is no longer there. They feel unimportant, abandoned, and perhaps even helpless. This shift is a game changer. The narcissist, who once thrived on manipulation, guilt-tripping, and control, is now left to face their own emotional emptiness without the empath to lean on. The empath, on the other hand, gains back their energy, their peace, and their self-respect. By simply refusing to pour more of themselves into someone who refuses to change, the empath takes back their power. And while the narcissist may try to draw them back in with guilt or charm, the empath knows better. They've stopped being the rescuer, and they've chosen to observe, to stay emotionally distant, and to protect their own well-being. This subtle yet powerful shift causes the narcissist's world to crack, because without their constant source of validation and energy, they are forced to confront their own emptiness, and the empath has moved on, stronger than ever. There's something incredibly powerful about a person who doesn't need to fight back, but simply exists as their true self. The narcissist, who thrives on manipulation, control, and deceit, has lived in a world where they can twist reality, charm people into believing their lies, and project an image that is far removed from their true nature. They've built a life based on illusion, where they are always the center of attention, the victim, the hero, the person everyone else revolves around. But then the super empath enters the scene. The empath doesn't engage in the narcissist's games. They don't react with anger. They don't scream or try to tear the narcissist down. Instead, they quietly exist in their own truth, maintaining their peace, their calm, their clarity. And in doing so, they become the mirror the narcissist never wanted to see. The narcissist looks into the empath's eyes, and suddenly they are faced with their own reflection, a cold, clear view of the person they truly are. No filters, no excuses, just raw reality staring back at them. This mirror effect is not about confrontation or revenge. It's not about calling out the narcissist's flaws or pointing out their mistakes. It's simply about the empath standing firm in their own sense of self without the need to explain, justify, or fight. The empath's quiet strength is the reflection that the narcissist can't escape. It's the image they are trying to avoid, the truth they refuse to see. But now there it is, staring them in the face, undeniable and unspoken. The narcissist's world begins to shift because, for the first time, they can no longer manipulate the situation to make themselves look good. They can no longer twist the narrative to suit their needs. The empath's calm presence is a mirror that doesn't flinch or distort reality. The narcissist may try to deflect, to charm their way out of it, but the mirror stays in place. And slowly, that calm reflection begins to gnaw at the narcissist's ego. They start to feel the discomfort of seeing themselves for who they really are. the selfish, insecure, manipulative person they've worked so hard to hide from the world. The narcissist isn't used to being confronted with their true self in such a direct, silent way. The empath doesn't have to say a word to break through the narcissist's defenses. The mere presence of their calm, steady being, unaffected by the narcissist's games, is enough to crack the narcissist's illusion. And that in itself is more powerful than any argument or explosion ever could be. In the end, the mirror effect works silently but deeply. The narcissist is forced to see the truth of who they are, not through the lens of their manipulations, but through the steady, unwavering gaze of the empath. And that reflection, though it may not be immediately acknowledged, changes everything. The narcissist can never look at themselves the same way again. The most dangerous thing to a narcissist is not hatred, not anger, but indifference. Hate still gives them power. It fuels their desire to argue, to manipulate, to make the empath feel something. Anger still creates a reaction, a moment where they can twist the narrative and regain control. But indifference, that's something entirely different. When a super empath stops reacting emotionally, when they stop caring, it's like a silent bomb exploding within the narcissist's world. They can no longer control the empath through guilt, manipulation, or even anger. The empath simply doesn't care anymore. And that single shift is more destructive to the narcissist's ego than anything else. Indifference doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. It doesn't make a scene. It's quiet, it's calm, and it's unshakable. And that is exactly what the narcissist cannot handle. For so long, they've relied on the empath's emotional responses. They've known exactly how to trigger guilt, how to spark frustration, how to make the empath feel sorry for them and continue pouring energy into the relationship. But when the empath no longer cares, the narcissist loses their power. Their games don't work anymore. The emotional leverage they used to have is gone. What makes empathic indifference so deadly is the way it forces the narcissist to face the reality they've been avoiding. They are no longer the center of the empath's world. The empath isn't trying to change them. They aren't pleading for attention. They're simply choosing to step away from the narcissist's chaos and protect their own peace. And that absence of energy, of emotional connection, is a blow to the narcissist's ego that no argument could ever match. They feel small. They feel irrelevant. They feel powerless. In many ways, indifference is the ultimate rejection for a narcissist because it means the empath has recognized their true worth. They've realized they don't need to fight or argue to protect themselves. They simply need to walk away. The narcissist's world starts to crumble when they realize they can't get under the empath's skin anymore. No matter how hard they try to provoke, to charm, or to manipulate, they no longer get the reactions they crave. And that's when they understand they've truly lost control. This isn't about the empath becoming cold or callous. It's about self-preservation. It's about the empath choosing not to feed the narcissist's insatiable need for attention and validation. And that choice, the ability to stand unaffected and not engage, is the deadliest weapon they possess. The narcissist can't fight what they can't provoke, and they can't manipulate someone who has simply stopped caring. The moment the empath embraces their indifference, the narcissist's grip on them is truly broken, and it's a quiet, powerful form of freedom. There comes a moment in every super empath's journey when they stop waiting for permission to grow. For so long, they may have held back, afraid of outshining those around them, especially the narcissist who thrives on controlling everyone in their orbit. The empath may have felt that their healing process needed validation, approval, or the green light from someone else, especially from the narcissist. But eventually something shifts. The super empath realizes that their growth doesn't require anyone's approval, not even the narcissists. They begin to heal, to shine, and to evolve, and they do it without looking for external validation. They stop needing to be told they're doing well or receiving recognition for their efforts. The empath starts to trust themselves, and this trust becomes the foundation of their transformation. This kind of growth is incredibly powerful because it happens on the empath's terms, not based on the whims of the narcissist or anyone else. The narcissist, who once relied on keeping the empath emotionally dependent, now finds themselves powerless as the empath's light grows brighter. The narcissist can no longer dictate how the empath feels or how much energy they can take. The empath no longer needs to seek validation or affirmation from the narcissist's fickle approval. They begin to heal and shine with a quiet confidence, no longer bound by the narcissist's expectations. For the narcissist, this is a terrifying sight. They have spent so much time trying to keep the empath under their thumb, trying to hold them back, to make them feel small, dependent, and unworthy. But now the empath is rising. Their light isn't dimmed by the narcissist's games anymore. In fact, the more the empath grows, the more they realize their own strength and worth, and the more the narcissist loses control. They can only watch helplessly as the empath heals, evolves, and becomes everything they once tried to stop them from being. The narcissist's grip slips because they can no longer manipulate the empath's emotions. They can no longer control their growth or prevent their happiness. The super empath doesn't need permission to be happy, to succeed, or to thrive. They've finally learned that their worth is not dependent on anyone else's validation. It comes from within. And that is the most powerful kind of growth, the kind that is not dictated by external forces, especially not by the narcissist. The empath rises on their own, and in doing so, they break free from the narcissist's hold forever. The most powerful goodbye is often the one that's never spoken. When a super empath finally reaches the point of detachment, they don't beg, they don't plead, they don't waste any more energy on trying to convince the narcissist of their worth. Instead, they simply pull back, quietly and calmly, choosing peace over chaos. This is the moment when the empath, having seen through the narcissist's games, decides that their emotional well-being is more important than any drama or manipulation. The narcissist is left with nothing but silence, a silence that speaks volumes. Emotional silence is far louder than any argument or confrontation could ever be. The narcissist thrives on attention, drama, and reactions. They want to provoke a response, to keep the empath emotionally hooked, to keep them fighting or pleading for change. But when the empath stops giving those reactions, when they withdraw completely from the emotional chaos, it's like a bombshell going off in the narcissist's mind. This silence isn't the absence of love or care, it's the absence of need. The empath no longer needs the narcissist, and that simple realization is enough to rattle the narcissist to their core. The narcissist expects the empath to fight, to defend themselves, to argue or cry or show that they care. But when the empath quietly detaches, it's as if they've closed a door the narcissist can never reopen. There's no more drama, no more games. The narcissist is left staring at an empty space where they once had control. And this absence, this emotional withdrawal, is the loudest goodbye they could receive. It's the final reminder that their power over the empath has ended. For the narcissist, this quiet exit is not only confusing, it's also devastating. It doesn't matter how much they try to play the victim or spin the story in their favor. The empath's refusal to engage, their emotional silence, sends a message that is undeniable. The narcissist is no longer relevant to the empath. The relationship is over, and the narcissist cannot force the empath to care, to return, or to keep playing the emotional games. This lack of response, this absence of need, leaves a deep scar on the narcissist's ego that no amount of manipulation or charm can heal. Emotional silence is the loudest goodbye because it doesn't leave room for the narcissist to rewrite the narrative. They can't manipulate the empath back into the fold. The empath's detachment stands as a final, undeniable statement. The narcissist no longer has power, and in the silence, the narcissist is forced to face the painful truth that they have lost control, and the empath has moved on, stronger and more self-assured than ever. For so long, super empaths have been conditioned to shrink themselves, to make others feel comfortable, to fit into the spaces and expectations of those around them. They apologize for their existence, for their emotions, for simply being who they are. They make themselves smaller to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to protect others from their presence. But eventually something shifts. The super empath begins to realize that their worth isn't dependent on how much they can bend or accommodate others. They begin to take up space, unapologetically. They stop shrinking themselves to make others comfortable. They stop apologizing for existing, for taking up room in this world, for being exactly who they are. This shift is nothing short of revolutionary. When the empath starts owning their space, owning their worth, it's as if a light has been switched on within them. They stop dimming their brilliance to make someone else feel better. They stop shrinking their heart, their voice, and their dreams. Instead, they stand tall. And for the narcissist who once believed they had the power to break or control the empath, this newfound confidence is a direct blow to their ego. The narcissist thrives on control, on making others feel small so that they can feel big. They feed off the vulnerability of others, using guilt, manipulation, and charm to break down those around them. They want to keep people in a constant state of self-doubt, always seeking approval and never fully standing in their own power. But when a super empath stops apologizing for their existence, when they start to take up the space they deserve, the narcissist is faced with a truth they can't escape. They never had the power they thought they had over the empath. This new version of the empath, the one who no longer seeks approval, who no longer shrinks back to make others comfortable, is a threat to the narcissist in ways they never expected. The narcissist can no longer manipulate or control someone who has fully embraced their own worth and stopped apologizing for their presence. To the narcissist, someone who stands tall in their truth, unapologetically taking up space, is the ultimate rebellion. It shatters the illusion that they can break people down, mold them into what they want. The narcissist hates seeing the empath rise, stand firm, and take up space because it forces them to confront the fact that their attempts to control and diminish the empath have failed. For the super empath, the journey from shrinking to standing tall is an act of self-love, of reclaiming their right to exist fully without shame or apology. And when the empath finally stops apologizing for taking up space, it's not just a personal victory. It's a declaration that they are no longer afraid to be themselves. They have stepped into their power, and that is something the narcissist can never take away. For a long time, the super empath was the target of the narcissist's manipulation. They were subjected to emotional abuse, gaslighting, and constant attempts to control their every move. The narcissist used their vulnerabilities as a weapon, feeding off the empath's empathy and emotional energy. Every insult, every betrayal, every cruel word was a way for the narcissist to manipulate the empath into feeling weak, dependent, and less than. But there comes a moment when the empath no longer allows the pain to break them. Instead, they begin to transform it. The super empath takes what the narcissist used to break them and turns it into their greatest strength. What was once manipulation fuel becomes the fire that propels the empath forward. The hurt, the rejection, the betrayals, these become the building blocks of their resilience. Instead of letting those experiences define them as broken or powerless, the empath uses them to fuel their growth. They channel the pain into motivation to rise higher, to build a stronger sense of self, and to never let the narcissist's games control their future. This transformation is incredibly powerful. The narcissist's attempts to tear the empath down, to make them feel small and worthless, now become the very source of the empath's power. Every time the narcissist tried to break them, they grew stronger. Every cruel tactic they used to manipulate the empath only sharpened the empath's inner strength. The empath no longer looks at the past with regret or pain. Instead, they see it as the raw material from which they built their own power. The narcissist can never predict this kind of transformation. They expect their victims to stay broken, to remain forever trapped in the emotional wounds they inflicted. But the super empath does the unthinkable. They turn their pain into purpose. They rise above the narcissist's control, using everything they learned, every tear they shed, and every lesson they gained from their suffering to step into their true power. What once seemed like a defeat becomes the catalyst for the empath's victory. The narcissist, who expected to have the upper hand, now finds themselves in the shadow of someone they underestimated. The empath has turned the tables, and the narcissist realizes too late that their manipulation has only helped the empath become stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. This transformation is a powerful statement. No matter what the narcissist did, the empath will not be broken. Instead, they will rise, stronger than ever, and take back their power, using the very pain that was meant to destroy them to fuel their growth. The narcissist's rage has always been a tool of control, a weapon used to instill fear and keep the empath in line. For so long, the narcissists use their emotional outbursts, threats, and tantrums to manipulate the empath, to make them doubt their worth, and to bend them to their will. The empath was taught to fear the narcissist's anger, to tiptoe around their moods, to apologize even when they weren't at fault, just to avoid the wrath that always seemed ready to explode. But there comes a turning point, a shift where the empath no longer fears the narcissist's rage. Fear is gone. Control is gone. This is a pivotal moment for the empath because the narcissist's anger, which once had such power over them, no longer holds any sway. The narcissist's tantrums are no longer able to pull the empath back into the cycle of emotional abuse. The empath has finally realized that the narcissist's rage is not a reflection of their own worth, but of the narcissist's inability to control or manipulate others. The threats, the shouting, the emotional blackmail, these things no longer have the ability to affect the empath on a deep emotional level. At this point, the empath has learned to see the narcissist's rage for what it truly is, a desperate attempt to regain control. The narcissist's tantrums are rooted in insecurity, in a need to dominate, and in a fear of losing power. But for the empath who has learned to stand firm in the truth and embrace their own worth, the narcissist's rage has lost its edge. The narcissist may try to intimidate, to shout, or to gaslight the empath into doubting themselves, but the empath no longer buys into it. They recognize the rage for what it is, empty and powerless. The narcissist knows this shift has occurred. They can feel it, even if the empath doesn't say a word. The tantrums no longer work to break the empath down. The silent treatment, the threats, the emotional manipulation, they no longer get the desired reaction. The empath has stopped reacting with fear, with self-doubt, or with guilt. Instead, they remain calm, unshaken, and emotionally detached. And that emotional detachment is the narcissist's worst nightmare. For the narcissist, their emotional outbursts were a tool to regain control, to break their victims down and keep them in a state of submission. But the empath's refusal to be intimidated, to be shaken, strips the narcissist of that tool. No longer can they use their rage to trigger the empath or manipulate them into submission. The empath has found their inner strength, and the narcissist knows they've lost their grip. This doesn't mean the empath is immune to the narcissist's anger or that they don't feel any emotion. It means the empath has learned how to protect themselves. They've learned to emotionally detach, to remain grounded, and to stand firm in their sense of self, regardless of the narcissist's tantrums. The narcissist may still try to escalate the situation, but the empath no longer takes the bait. The empath's peace becomes their armor, and the narcissist's rage becomes nothing more than a hollow sound that fades into the background. The narcissist can no longer manipulate the empath with fear, because the empath has learned that the narcissist's rage is nothing more than an empty threat. The empath knows that they are no longer at the mercy of the narcissist's emotional storms. They have broken free from the cycle of fear, and with that freedom comes a profound sense of empowerment. The narcissist's inability to control the empath, to make them fear their anger, is a devastating blow to their ego. The narcissist may try to escalate their tantrums, but the empath is no longer fazed. The empath's silence, their calm, and their emotional distance become a reminder that the narcissist no longer has the power to control them. And that, more than anything, is the final blow to the narcissist's control. The empath has taken back their power, and the narcissist's rage is now just another empty noise in the background, powerless and ineffective. When the super empath begins to heal and reclaim their power, something incredible happens. They start to attract real, healthy relationships. Gone are the days of toxic dynamics, draining friendships, and emotionally unavailable partners. Instead, the empath's newfound sense of self-worth acts like a magnet, pulling in the kind of love and connections they've always deserved. These relationships are based on mutual respect, honesty, and kindness, values the narcissist could never provide. The narcissist watches from the sidelines, unable to comprehend how the empath, once broken and emotionally drained, now stands tall, surrounded by people who truly care for them. This shift stings deeper than words. The narcissist, who once thrived on controlling and manipulating the empath, now sees the empath thriving without them. The empath is no longer seeking validation or approval from the narcissist, and they are no longer caught in the narcissist's web of lies and manipulation. Instead, the empath is free, creating real connections with people who see them for who they truly are. The narcissist's inability to control the empath's emotions and relationships is a blow to their ego. They can't stand the thought of the empath thriving, finding real love, or building authentic friendships. Because for the narcissist, it's always been about being the center of attention. Watching the empath live a life filled with genuine love and healthy connections is a stark reminder that the narcissist is no longer needed. The narcissist cannot understand how the empath, who once gave everything to them, is now surrounded by people who offer what the narcissist could never give: true, unconditional support and love. This transformation doesn't just benefit the empath, it creates a ripple effect. When the empath starts attracting healthy relationships, they are no longer defined by their past wounds. They step into a life of abundance, filled with people who value them for who they are. It's a stark contrast to the narcissist's manipulative tactics, which were always designed to make the empath feel small, isolated, and alone. The empath's ability to move on and find love without the narcissist's interference shows just how far they've come, and just how powerless the narcissist has become. For the narcissist, watching the empath grow and flourish without them is the ultimate defeat. It's a reminder that no matter how hard they tried to break the empath down, they couldn't steal the empath's ability to love, to connect, and to be happy. The narcissist is left with nothing but the bitter realization that the empath has moved on and found a life they could never have imagined with them. The narcissist, once the center of the empath's world, now sits on the sidelines, watching as the empath experiences the love, respect, and happiness they've always deserved. This is the true power of healing. The empath doesn't need the narcissist to thrive. They find real, authentic connections, and that, more than anything, shows the narcissist that their power over the empath has truly ended. For the super empath, truth is not just a choice, it's the foundation of their entire existence. They live authentically, speaking and acting from a place of integrity, not manipulation. Unlike the narcissist, who thrives on games, deceit, and illusion, the empath refuses to engage in the drama of playing mind games or using tactics to get ahead. Instead, they rely on transparency. And in this transparency, something powerful happens. The narcissist's lies, distortions, and manipulations are exposed for all to see. Truth over tactics becomes the empath's silent weapon. The narcissist is a master of deceit. They craft elaborate lies, create false narratives, and use charm to manipulate those around them. They thrive on creating confusion, making others question their reality, and using emotional blackmail to control and dominate. But the super empath, grounded in their own truth, doesn't fall for these tactics. They see through the smoke and mirrors. They don't need to manipulate or deceive to get what they want. Their honesty and authenticity are what set them apart. What the narcissist doesn't realize is that when the empath refuses to engage in their games, when they choose to live truthfully, the narcissist's lies are no longer effective. The narcissist relies on the confusion they create, on the emotional fog they generate, to keep people under their control. But when the empath stands in the light of truth, that fog begins to dissipate. The narcissist's manipulations are exposed, not by confrontation or anger, but simply by the empath's refusal to play along. The empath doesn't need to argue or fight to prove their point. They don't need to expose the narcissist's lies with anger or bitterness. Their very presence, their honesty, and their ability to live in the light of truth do all the work. The narcissist's lies start to unravel on their own, exposed for what they really are, empty and hollow. This is a devastating blow to the narcissist, who has built their entire identity on falsehoods and control. For the narcissist, truth is an enemy. Their entire existence relies on deception, on twisting the narrative to suit their needs. They cannot bear the idea that someone, especially the empath, could see through their lies without needing to confront them or play their games. The narcissist can't handle the clarity and transparency that comes with the empath's truth, because it leaves them nowhere to hide. Every lie, every manipulation is laid bare, and the narcissist is left exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. The empath's ability to live truthfully is their greatest strength. It's not about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about standing firm in who they are, in their own values and integrity. This truth doesn't need to be shouted from the rooftops. It simply radiates from the empath's actions, from their calm, from their unwavering sense of self. And in that transparency, the narcissist's tactics lose their power. The empath doesn't need to lower themselves to the narcissist's level. They don't need to engage in their toxic games. The narcissist's lies unravel naturally when faced with the light of the empath's truth. In the end, it's not about confrontation, it's about authenticity. The narcissist's world of deceit and manipulation can only hold up for so long in the face of someone who refuses to play the game. The empath's truth is not just a weapon, it's a shield. And with that shield, they expose every narcissistic lie, leaving the narcissist standing alone, with nothing but the hollow shell of their false reality. For the super empath, revenge is a concept that holds no real power. Unlike the narcissist, who seeks to destroy, manipulate, and dominate those around them, the empath's journey is not about payback. They don't seek revenge, they outgrow. The empath doesn't need to lower themselves to the narcissist's level by engaging in petty battles or retaliatory tactics. Instead, they focus on personal growth, healing, and evolution. As the empath grows stronger, wiser, and more self-aware, the narcissist becomes nothing more than a distant memory, irrelevant in the empath's new reality. The narcissist, on the other hand, thrives on creating chaos and destruction. They want to keep people locked in a cycle of conflict, pain, and drama so they can feel powerful. Revenge is the fuel that keeps their ego inflated. They want to win, to have the last word, and to see their victims suffer. But the empath doesn't fall for that trap. Instead of engaging in the cycle of vengeance, they rise above it. They focus on healing and evolving, and in doing so, they become someone who no longer has time or energy for the narcissist's games. What the narcissist doesn't realize is that by choosing to evolve, the empath takes away their power entirely. The narcissist is so accustomed to being the center of attention, to having control over others, that they can't fathom what it means for someone to simply move on without them. When the empath evolves, when they let go of the past and focus on their own growth, they make the narcissist irrelevant. The narcissist's need for validation, control, and domination becomes powerless when the empath stops seeking their approval or revenge. The empath's life becomes filled with new opportunities, healthier relationships, and a deep sense of self-worth. Meanwhile, the narcissist is left behind, their need for conflict and manipulation fading into the background. In the end, it's the empath's evolution that stings the most for the narcissist. They want to believe they still have power over the empath, that they can still control their narrative. But the empath's ability to rise above, to grow and outshine the negativity of the past, is the ultimate form of revenge. The narcissist becomes nothing more than a shadow in the empath's story, a footnote in a chapter that no longer holds any weight. The real power lies in the empath's ability to move on with grace and strength, to outgrow the pain and the drama. They no longer need to prove anything to the narcissist or anyone else. Their evolution speaks for itself, and it's in this growth that the narcissist truly loses. The empath's journey of self-discovery, healing, and personal empowerment makes the narcissist's manipulative tactics obsolete. They may have once held a significant place in the empath's life, but now the narcissist is nothing more than a distant memory, no longer able to exert any influence or control. The empath's outgrowth is the ultimate victory, and in the process, the narcissist becomes irrelevant. For the narcissist, control is everything. They thrive on attention, validation, and the constant need to be the center of someone else's world. They manipulate, deceive, and gaslight to keep their victims hooked, ensuring that they never forget them, that they always remain a focal point in the victim's life. But the ultimate blow to the narcissist's ego is when the empath, who was once ensnared in their web, simply forgets them. There are no more texts, no more desperate attempts to reach out, no more emotional energy devoted to them. The empath has moved on, and the narcissist, for the first time, is irrelevant. This silence, this absence of attention, is ego death for the narcissist. The narcissist depends on validation from others to feel whole. Their entire sense of self is built on the ability to manipulate and control those around them. They want to be remembered, to have their presence felt, and to know that others are always thinking about them. The narcissist's worst fear is being forgotten, fading into the background, no longer being the center of anyone's universe. And for the empath, to move on and let go completely is a silent yet powerful act of defiance. It's not revenge, it's not anger, it's simply the result of the empath reclaiming their life, their energy, and their worth. When the empath no longer thinks about the narcissist, when the narcissist no longer occupies any space in their mind, it's a blow to the narcissist that they cannot recover from. For the narcissist, there's nothing more painful than realizing that their once targeted victim has completely moved on without them. The empath has learned to disconnect, to break free from the emotional chains that once held them. This is the ultimate form of emotional freedom. The silence left behind by the empath is deafening to the narcissist. No longer is there someone reacting to their lies, their gaslighting, or their manipulative behavior. No longer are they able to stir up drama or keep the empath trapped in their games. The narcissist may try to reach out, but their attempts fall flat. The empath's complete detachment is the ultimate form of rejection, and it's a rejection that the narcissist cannot tolerate. This silence isn't born of bitterness or anger. It's simply the result of the empath finally breaking free and finding peace. They no longer need to engage with the narcissist. The narcissist no longer has the power to control their thoughts or emotions. And for the narcissist, that's ego death. They may try to play the victim or escalate their behavior in an attempt to regain attention. But it's too late. The empath has already moved on, and the narcissist's grip has loosened. The narcissist may still believe they are in control of the narrative, but in reality, they've lost. They've been forgotten, and this absence of attention is the most crushing defeat of all. For the super empath, this is the final step in reclaiming their power. They no longer think about the narcissist. The narcissist becomes irrelevant, a mere blip in the empath's journey of growth and healing. This silence is the end of the narcissist's reign over the empath's life and the beginning of the empath's true freedom. There comes a moment in a super empath's journey where something powerful happens. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet and strong. It's the moment they stop looking back, not because they forgot the pain or pretend it never happened, but because they have finally made peace with it. The narcissist, who once lived in their head like a storm, slowly becomes just a faded memory, no longer part of their story moving forward. The empath doesn't need closure anymore. They don't need apologies that were never going to come or explanations that would only bring more confusion. They let go, not for the narcissist, but for themselves. Because holding on, replaying every conversation, every argument, every betrayal, that keeps the pain alive, that keeps the narcissist close, even when they're gone. But the moment the empath says, "I don't need to understand it all to move on," that's when true freedom begins. It's not easy. The path to peace is not smooth or simple. There are nights full of questions, days of sadness, moments of doubt. But slowly, the empath starts choosing themselves. They learn how to breathe without fear. They build routines without the weight of someone else's needs crushing their own. They laugh again, not to cover pain, but because joy is coming back naturally. They stop checking their phone, hoping for a message. They stop imagining what the narcissist is doing or if they're thinking about them. That part of their brain goes quiet. Not dead, just done. The narcissist loses their grip, not because the empath fought harder, but because the empath stopped fighting at all. They let the war go. They step out of the cycle of needing to be heard or seen or right. They don't look for justice anymore. They create peace instead. And that peace is the real victory. Because the narcissist wanted to stay relevant. Even in anger, they wanted attention. Even through hate, they wanted to matter. But when the empath stops reacting, stops remembering, stops revolving around their past, the narcissist fades. That's the one thing the narcissist fears most. Being irrelevant, being erased, not hated but forgotten. That's what true healing looks like. Not big speeches or final showdowns. Just silence, just space, just choosing joy over pain, truth over confusion, and calm over chaos. The empath begins to grow. And that growth isn't about revenge. It's not about showing the narcissist how well they're doing. It's not even about proving something to anyone. It's just life, real, full, meaningful life. The empath starts building new relationships, ones that don't need fixing. They learn what healthy love feels like, how it doesn't drain you or make you small. They stop apologizing for who they are. They stop trying to fit into spaces they've outgrown. They shine not out of spite, but because they finally see their own light again. And the narcissist, they can't follow. They can't reach where the empath is going. Because that new life the empath is building doesn't have room for control, lies, or manipulation. It's peaceful, and peaceful people don't invite chaos back in. The narcissist might try, maybe through guilt, or fake kindness, or even new drama, but it doesn't work. Because the empath isn't the same person anymore. They see clearly now. They're not waiting by the door. They're not stuck in the past. They're living in the present. And in this new life, the narcissist simply doesn't exist. That's the most powerful ending of all. No revenge, no bitterness, just peace. Just the decision to move forward and leave the narcissist behind, not as an enemy, not even as a memory, but as a part of the past that no longer controls the future. The empath doesn't carry hate in their heart. They don't need it. What they carry is understanding, not just of what happened, but of who they've become. And that understanding gives them strength. It gives them freedom. It lets them walk into a life that isn't built on wounds or war, but on wholeness. They may never get a sorry. They may never get the truth. But that's okay. They've stopped waiting. They've stopped needing. They've stopped hoping for someone else to fix what was broken. They've done the work themselves. And in doing so, they've taken back all the power the narcissist thought they had.